Scenes and Adventures in the Semi-Alpine region of the Ozark Mountains of Missouri and Arkansas, 1853, by Henry Rowe, Schoolcraft. Incidents of Travel, Chapter 2, Number 6. July 13th. We renewed the attempt to pass Cape Garlic at an early hour, and succeeded after a protracted and severe trial. But two of our best men immediately declared their unwillingness to proceed farther in these severe labors, in which they were obliged to pull like oxen, and they were promptly paid off by the captain and permitted to return. The crew, thus diminished, went on a short distance further with the barge, and came to at the mouth of the Obrazo River, to await the effort of our commander to procure additional hands. We had not now advanced more than 2 miles, which constituted the sum of this day's progress. While moored here, we were passed by 4 boats filled with emigrants from Vermont and western New York, destined for Boone's Lick on the Missouri. I embraced the occasion of this delay to make some excursions in the vicinity. July 14th. Having been successful in obtaining a reinforcement of hands from the interior, we pursued the ascent and made 6 miles along the Missouri shore. The next day, the 15th, we ascended 7 miles. This leisurely tracing of the coast revealed to me some of the minutest features of its geological structure. The cliffs consist of horizontal strata of limestone, resting on granular crystalline sandstone. Nothing can equal the beauty of the varying landscape presented for the last 2 days. There has appeared a succession of the most novel and interesting objects. Whatever pleasure can be derived from the contemplation of natural objects, presented in surprising and picturesque groups, can here be enjoyed in the highest degree. Even art may be challenged to contrast with more effect the bleak and rugged cliff with the verdant forest, the cultivated field, or the wide extended surface of the Mississippi, interspersed with its beautiful islands, and winding majestically through a country which only requires the improvements of civilized and refined society to render it one of the most delightful residences of man. Nor is it possible to contemplate the vast extent, fertility, resources, and increasing population of this immeasurable valley without feeling a desire that our lives could be prolonged to an unusual period, that we might survey, 100 years hence, the improved social and political condition of the country, and live to participate in its advantages, improvements, and power. All the emigrants whom we have passed seem to be buoyed up by a hopeful and enterprising character, and although most of them are manifestly from the poorest classes, and are from 12 to 1,500 miles on their adventurous search for a new home, from none have I heard a word of despondency. July 16th. I observed today, at Cape St. Colm, large angular fragments of a species of coarse granular sandstone rock, which appear to be a disjecta membra of a much more recent formation than that underlying the prevalent surface formation. The gay and noisy paroquet was frequently seen this day, wheeling in flocks over the river. And at one point, which was revealed suddenly, we beheld a large flock of pelicans standing along a low, sandy peninsula. Either the current during today's voyage was less furious, or the bargemen exerted more strength or skill, for we ascended 10 miles, and encamped at the foot of Boy Brule, Burntwood Bottom. The term bottom is applied in the West to extensive tracts of level and arable alluvial soil, whether covered by or denuded of native forest trees. We found it the commencement of a comparatively populous and flourishing settlement, having on the next day, 17th, passed along its margin for 7 miles. Its entire length is 12 miles. July 18th. The most prominent incidents of this day were the passing on the Illinois shore of the celebrated site of Fort Chartres and the influx of the Kaskaskia, or as it is abbreviated by the men, Oka or Ka River, a large stream on the eastern shore. These names will recall some of the earliest and most stirring scenes of Illinois history. The town of Kaskaskia, which is the present seat of the territorial government, is seated 7 miles above its mouth. Fort Chartres is now a ruin, and owing to the capricious channel of the Mississippi, is rapidly tumbling into it. It had been a regular work built of stone, according to the principles of military art. Its walls formerly contained not only the chief element of military power in French Illinois, but also sheltered the ecclesiastics and traders of the time. In an old manuscript journal of that fort, which I have seen, a singular custom of the Osages is mentioned on the authority of one Monsieur Girardot. He says, December 22nd, 1776, that they have a feast, which they generally celebrate about the month of March, when they bake a large corn cake of about 3 or 4 feet diameter, and of 2 or 3 inches thickness. This is cut into pieces from the center to the circumference, and the principal chief or warrior arises and advances to the cake, when he declares his valor and recounts his noble actions. If he is not contradicted, or none has aught to allege against him, he takes a piece of the cake and distributes it among the boys of the nation, repeating to them his noble exploits and exhorting them to imitate them. Another then approaches and in the same manner recounts his achievements and proceeds as before. Should anyone attempt to take of the cake, to whose character there is the least exception, he is stigmatized and set aside as a poltroon. It is said by some of the oldest and most intelligent inhabitants of St. Louis that about 1768, when the British had obtained possession of Fort Chartres, a very nefarious transaction took place in that vicinity, in the assassination of the celebrated Indian chief Pontiac. Tradition tells us that this man had exercised great influence in the North and West, and that he resisted the transfer of authority from the French to the English on the fall of Canada. Carver has a story on this subject, detailing the siege of Detroit in 1763, which has been generally read. The version of Pontiac's death in Illinois is this. While encamped in this vicinity, an Illinois Indian, who had given in his adherence to the new dynasty of the English, was hired by the promise of rum by some English traders to assassinate the chief. While the latter was reposing on his pallet at night, still vainly dreaming, perhaps, of driving the English out of America, and of restoring his favorite Indo-Gallic empire in the West. July 19th. We ascended the Mississippi 7 miles yesterday, to which, by all appliances, we added 11 miles today, which is our maximum ascent in one day. 5 miles of this distance, along the Missouri shore, consists of the great public field of St. Genevieve. This field is a monument of early French policy in the days of Indian supremacy, when the agricultural population of a village was brought to labor in proximity, so that any sudden and capricious attack of the natives could be effectively repelled. We landed at the mouth of the Gabourey, a small stream which passes through the town. St. Genevieve lies on higher ground, above the reach of the inundations, about a mile west of the land. It consists of some 300 wooden houses, including several stores, a post office, courthouse, Roman Catholic church, and a branch of the Missouri Bank, having a capital of $50,000. The town is one of the principal markets and places of shipment for the Missouri lead mines. Heavy stacks of lead and pigs are one of the chief characteristics which I saw in and often piled up in front of its storehouses. and they give one the idea of a considerable export in this article. July 20th. I devoted this day to a reconnaissance of St. Genevieve and its environs. The style of building reminds one of the ancient Belgic and Dutch settlements on the banks of the Hudson and Mohawk. High-pointed roofs to low one-story buildings and large stone chimneys outdoors. The streets are narrow, and the whole village is compact as if built to sustain a siege. The water of the Mississippi is falling rapidly and leaves on the shores a deposit of mud varying from a foot to 2 feet in depth. This recent deposit appears to consist essentially of silex and alumine in a state of very intimate mixture. An opinion is prevalent throughout this country that the water of the Mississippi, whatever impurity, is healthful as a common drink, and accordingly the boatmen and many of the inhabitants on the banks of the river make use of no other water. An expedient resorted to at first, perhaps from necessity, may be continued from an impression of the benefits resulting from it. I am not well enough acquainted with the chemical properties of the water, or the method in which it operates on the human system, to deny its utility, but, to my palate, clear spring water is far preferable. A simple method is pursued for clarifying it. A handful of Indian meal is sprinkled on the surface of a vessel of water, precipitating the mud to the bottom, and the superincumbent water is left in a tolerable state of purity. July 21st. We again set forward this morning. On ascending 3 miles, we came to Little Rock Ferry, a noted point of crossing from the east to the west of the Mississippi. The most remarkable incident in the history of this place is the residence of an old French soldier of an age gone by who has left his name in the geography of the surrounding country. M. Breton, the person alluded to, is stated to be at this time 109 years of age. Tradition says that he was at Braddock's defeat, at the siege of Louisbourg, at the building of Fort Chartres in Illinois, and at the siege of Bergen-op-Zoom in Flanders. While wandering as a hunter, after his military services had ended, in the country about 40 miles west of the Mississippi, he discovered the extensive lead mines which continue to bear his name. We ascended this day 12 miles, which is the utmost stretch of our exertions against the turbid and heavy tide of this stream. Our captain, Ensminger, looked in the evening as if he had been struggling all day in a battle, and his men took to the pallets as if exhausted to the last degree. July 22nd. I have seen very little thus far in the Mississippi, in the shape of fish. The only species noticed has been the gar, one of which I caught as described from the side of the boat, while lying at the mouth of the Ohio. Of all rivers in the West, I should think it the least favorable to this form of organized matter. Of the coarse species of the catfish and buffalo fish which are found in its waters, I suppose the freshet has deprived us of a sight. Of antiquities, I have seen nothing since leaving the Ohio Valley till this day, when I picked up in my rambles on shore an ancient Indian dart of chert. The Indian antiquities on the Illinois shore, however, are stated to be very extensive. Near the Kaskaskia River are numerous mounds and earthworks which denote a heavy ancient population. The limestone cliffs at the place called Dormant Rocks assume a very imposing appearance. These precipitous walls bear the marks of attrition in water lines, very plainly impressed at great heights above the present water level, creating the idea that they may have served as barriers to some ancient ocean resting on the grand prairies of Illinois. We were passed near evening by the little steamer Harriet on her descent from St. Louis. This vessel is the same that was noticed on the 11th on her ascent, and is the only representative of steam power that we have observed. Our ascent this day was estimated at 13 miles.